guys, welcome to this episode of the Garage Gym Podcast. We got a big one today. There's 4 of us here. We got myself, Alex. We got Max von Muehldorfer, one of my weightlifting athletes. We have Quinn Everett, as well as his coach, Isaac Smith, who are a weightlifter and a weightlifting coach from down east here in Canada. Quinn is a multiple-time national champion at Superheavyweights, and Isaac is his coach. So if you guys just want to give us a little bit about yourself, Quinn, let's start off with you. Let's tell us about you.
Sure. So I picked up weightlifting in the summer of 2015. I just finished playing football, played through college, played a couple years for Winnipeg, and then got cut, and then struggled with what do I do now, and knew I wanted to get into strength sports, and then ended up meeting Isaac, and then since then we've been working together and competing and really trying to go with it.
Yeah. Isaac, how about you? Let's give us a little bit about you.
Started off weightlifting, just some exposure with canoe kayak. At that point, the strongest guy at our club could power clean and push press or some quasi movement at 60 kilos, which we all thought was pretty badass at that time. I got into CrossFit pretty early, but I kind of got into CrossFit with more so weightlifting in mind. I wanted to do that, but there's the only avenue that we had around here would be through CrossFit. I did a number of courses. I met a few people from Cal Strength, and from that experience, it kind of led me onto just focusing specifically on weightlifting, or more so on weightlifting. We didn't have an association when we first started. Back in 2014, it was pretty well run out of a guy's garage.
Oh, wow.
I went to train with him a few times, and he's like, just give me an hour so I can put some wood in the stove. Like, that's how backwards it was. So 2014, I was about 25 at the time. I became president of the NSWA.
The only member.
Yeah.
Yeah. President, athlete, coach, only member, pretty well. And then from that point, I started coaching, or I started getting into weightlifting, and I wanted people to help me out. So I'd pick up as much as I could from the internet. I'd kind of shark people from CrossFit and be like, hey, how about you come and weightlift with me a little bit more? And then we kind of started growing like a little team in our gym. But it was more so for me to get training partners that I was kind of coaching, so that it also helped me out and watch what I needed to do. So we were kind of figuring out our own way, just because we didn't really have a lot of guidance. From that point, I just started traveling around as much as I possibly could to pick up as much weightlifting as I possibly could. Learned a lot since then. Learned that I knew nothing. Figured out that I didn't know too much about that sport. And then from that point, Quinn came around. I was fortunate enough to be able to be in a situation of where he trusted me enough to be his coach. And then we've kind of been I've kind of been chasing them all over the world since then. Yeah.
All right. And then Max, let's give us a little bit about you.
Started Olympic weightlifting last 2019, like March-ish, kind of March, summer, like full-time. I wouldn't say full-time because I've used weightlifting for training for football, since I'm kind of going into my grade 12 season right now, like kind of been using that, weightlifting for football. Then I just kind of fell in love with it. But like, I've been playing sports all my life, played hockey, lacrosse, football, like you name it, badminton, junior high, like just like, anything I can do to stay active. Love doing it. And yeah, that's about, yeah.
Yeah. We're a little newer to the game than you guys are.
Yeah, I'm a little newer. I'm a little baby.
Yeah. It's funny. I still feel new to the game, so.
Yeah, me too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Just a little 125 kilo baby,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Quinn, give us a little more about your football career. How did that take off?
So I basically played any sport I could as a kid. like lacrosse, hockey,
Yeah.
football, basketball, baseball. I basically played anything but soccer because I didn't want to run a lot. So,
Yeah.
Anyways, started playing football in like grade 8. I was just like a big kid, and some football dad was like, "Hey, come play football." So okay. So I played football, just kind of did it for fun. Never actually thought it was serious until like maybe grade 11 or 12 when people were saying, "Hey, you're on recruiting list for college." And I thought, "Oh, that's sick. Like to go to college and play football." I never thought that was an option. Ended up getting a scholarship to go to Mount A, was there for 5 years. And I always wanted to go pro at that point, but didn't actually think it was like an option. I didn't think of myself ever as like a really, really good football player, but just like a grinder, just a guy that just worked harder than anyone else. So that's why I got the spot, like the starting spot. So basically in my 4th year, I got an email from a agent that was like, "Hey, I want to represent you, but you're not going to go as a D tackle." So I played like D tackle my whole life.
Yeah.
They're like, "You're not going to go pro as a D tackle. Like you're going to go pro as a center or a guard on offensive line." So I said, okay. That whole off season, I did everything I could to like learn offensive line, which you don't just learn in a couple months. D tackle is a pretty simple position. You just plug a hole and eat a double team, and don't let a lineman or don't let lineman push you back or like climb up to the second level of the backers. Like you're a plug basically. So it was super easy to do. Offensive line's a little different. You got to know defense fronts. You got to know coverages. You have to know blitz patterns. You have to know tendencies. You have to like, it's a whole different world. So I ended up having a pretty good showing at a combine, got drafted later on in the draft. So I think it was like 6th or 7th round. I went like 40 somethingth overall, just as like an investment guy. Went to Winnipeg, went there. My first camp, my first like rep ever playing offensive line was against a dude that played in the NFL for a couple years. So like that didn't go too well. But like everyone was cool about it. Everyone knew that I was a converted D tackle. So like people weren't giving me shit about it. They were just like, "Well, clearly you've never seen this before. So like, here's what you do in this scenario." So it was a lot of learning and a lot of overload. And I thought, okay, I'll come here for camp. They'll probably cut me. I'll go back to school, finish my 5th year, and then come back having more, knowing more. But I made the team my first year, which I didn't think was going to happen. So I made the team, but I still made the decision. I declined to dress, so I stayed on the PR the whole year. So I maintained my Mount Allison eligibility my last year. So if you dress one game, or if you earn a paycheck for one game, you forfeit the remainder of your amateur eligibility. Yeah. So if I had 3 years left and I played one game in the CFL and got paid, I would lose my 3 years. So I had like goals I wanted to achieve at Mount A, and I didn't achieve those yet. So I wanted to go back to do that my last year and finish my degree, right? Like pro sports isn't a long-term thing, wanted to stay safe, have something to fall back on, shit like that, right? So went back to Mount A halfway through the season, played O-line that year. We ended up winning our second AUS championship, and we went 8-0 in the regular season, which was the first time in school history, which was pretty cool. So anyways, achieved a bunch of stuff that I wanted to achieve. Went back the following year, thought, all right, I'm going to make the team and actually have a little more experience on my belt. This will be good. But I ended up getting cut that year during camp because Winnipeg was hosting the Grey Cup that year. And they didn't, it makes sense. Like as far as the model, when you're hosting the Grey Cup, you want to pump all your money into starters that are going to make a difference that year. Right. So I wasn't someone that was going to come in and make a huge impact that year. I was still learning, still new. I only had like really a year under my belt at this point. Right. So got cut, and then I tried to get picked up by another team. But on paper, I just looked like a guy that couldn't make the conversion from D tackle to O-line. Right. Like I didn't have much game film. It was hard to get picked up. And a lot of guys live their life or like a big portion of their life on this bubble, on a team, off a team, on a team, off a team, on a PR. Season's over, they spend all off season training, and then they like get invited to a camp, and then they get cut, like guys do that for years. And then at the end of it, don't have anything to show for it. Don't have any savings, don't have a career, don't have a degree, stuff like that. And I didn't want to do that. I thought I'll make a serious run at it. And if it doesn't happen, that's fine. I'll just like turn the page and do something else. So I gave myself to a certain point in that season. If I didn't get picked up or any interest, I was just going to call it. So that point came up, called my agent and said, hey, is there any news? And he said, no bites, like wrong time, wrong place to get cut kind of thing. And then just hung up the cleats at that point, moved on, and then got into weightlifting basically.
So as you were kind of on that bubble of in between on and off teams, like did you have weightlifting in the back of your mind already, or how did that come about? Was that something that you'd been doing for strength and conditioning beforehand, or was this something you hadn't even touched yet?
So with football, like everyone cleans, right?
Yeah.
I mean, calling it cleaning is generous, but everyone does hip throws. And that's fine. Like football players aren't Olympic weightlifters. They don't have to know how to clean perfectly, right? It's just a power movement. So I was cleaning since I was like 13 or 14, maybe 15. Anyways, a long time. Never really snatched, never jerked. I mean, I might have snatched, but again, it was probably just like a long pull or something, like it's not an actual snatch. But I always knew I wanted to get into strength sports after football because I never wanted to admit it to myself until football ended, but I kind of liked training for football more than I actually liked football.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm in too deep at this point. I can't admit that to myself. So, but then when the career was over, I was like, yeah, I like training way better than football. But I like, again, this is 2015. So like kind of Googled strength sports in Nova Scotia, and there wasn't much for strongman or powerlifting or weightlifting. Some of them had websites, but they were like not very user friendly. And there wasn't just like a call here if you're interested, or like go here if you're interested. It was like this, it was hard to start. So I thought, whatever finds me first, I'll do.
Yeah.
Right? And then I spent most of the summer trying to get a job as a recent grad. That's very difficult. Got a job, and the first week, one of my coworkers was wearing a Nova Scotia Weightlifting Association shirt. So I was like, hey, like, bring me. And he was like, maybe. And then I took out a video and showed him me cleaning, and he was like, okay, yeah, let's go. So that's how I kind of just like fell into it. I was willing to do strongman or powerlifting or weightlifting, anything that just kept me in a gym and kept me competitive. But weightlifting found me first through the coworker, and that's how I met Isaac. Isaac was his coach.
Oh yeah. So that was just kind of a huge coincidence that you ended up meeting
Totally.
Isaac. That.
Totally, like complete fluke.
Yeah. And I mean, as you were saying about websites not being user friendly and being impossible to find information about weightlifting on the internet, not much has changed.
Yeah, that's that's kind of consistent. I mean, weightlifting is like this secret society that lives in people's basements, but it's a pretty sweet sport. And like, I know it's like getting more user friendly and coming to life, especially with the help of CrossFit. People are realizing that like snatch and clean and jerk is a sport.
Yeah. As opposed to just CrossFit movements.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was kind of that first little bit of you transitioning to weightlifting from football like? Was it a steep learning curve since you'd never really jerked or snatched before? What was that like?
Well, everything
smiling,
like squats, pulls, and cleans were great, but snatches and jerks were a nightmare. Like I could in 4 pounds, but I could snatch maybe like 100 pounds. Like it was important, really important. It's just like all pushing and pulling, especially as a big guy. There's never at any point you put weight or strength over your head. The only thing I can think about is like if you're a DB or receiver, like catching a ball, but even then, like you're not training a whole lot of overhead movements the way you are training like squat, dead, bench, right? And cleans. So my overhead strength was super weak and still is weak compared to like my
you're pushing and pulling.
lower body and pulling and cleaning strength. But Yeah, exactly. So it's that was weird. Like my first time I qualified for nationals, I opened at a 110 snatch and I almost bombed out on it. I hit it on my third attempt. My PR at this point was like 130. So I almost bombed at 110
Yeah.
and then I hit 180 on the clean and jerk to get a 290 total, and that was the qualifying total that year for supers. So
Oh, wow.
it's like it was like this, but it's like it's getting closer, but it's still quite a gap.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's almost just a thing with heavyweights at a certain point.
Yeah, well, it was a huge learning curve, just like getting into position, holding a bar overhead, and just like being able to know how to engage my lats, holding a bar overhead, things like
Yeah.
that. I still like not struggle with it, but it's still something we work on.
Yeah. So Isaac, can you speak a little bit to what it was like first training Quinn when he first came in the gym? Like, what were your thoughts when you first met Quinn?
Who is this guy? So the group that we had, it was kind of like you almost had to be invited into it. And the guy that brought Quinn, he's a bit of an anomaly. Like he's a bit of a space cadet. So he's a great guy, but he's a bit of an oddball. So you see him just bring in this giant human bear, and you're like, oh, this is my buddy Quinn. And, and we're kind of like, okay, well, we'll fit you in where we can, but we got a class going on. So
Yeah.
I asked him, like, can you snatch? He's like, I've done it a few times. And I was like, okay, well, we're doing on the minute snatches. Can you do that? He's like, I'll try, but we ended up like him doing a clean workout, and and like he was someone who was just raw strength and power. So he came in, he had those old Reebok zigzags, and I think he went like, I think he was using pound plates at the time. He went like 135, 185 to 2. And I think we worked like closer to 300 pounds because like we didn't have enough kilo plates for him to use.
Yeah.
And then at this time, I'm watching him move. Okay, like, holy shit, this guy's talented. So at that point on that session, like it started off terribly because I didn't know, like, this guy is walking into our gym. I have no idea who he is, to being like, okay, well, we could probably do something pretty cool here in the next few years. Like we need to like, and we had this conversation pretty well the first week. I'm like, you're going to feel like you are being rushed to learn how to snatch and to learn how to jerk. Because from when he started to when we were aiming for the first qualifying competition, it was like what, 2 months?
Yeah, it was. I started with you end of August, started September, and our first competition was like November. So it was pretty quick turnaround.
Right. And at this point, like he was missing 90 kilo snatches
all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. Like it wouldn't be weird just to walk in and see me missing like a 60 kilo snatch. Like I just didn't know how to snatch at all.
Right. So at it right then, you kind of knew like, okay, he's a diamond in the rough for sure.
Yeah.
But he is capable of meddling within his first year. He's capable of doing something pretty cool within a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So a lot of investment or like time equity was put into him immediately from that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of a similar thing when Max first walked into our gym, because I remember you came in and you were in for some football training.
Yeah.
And Rob and I at the time were like, okay, this guy's 15 and he's huge and he can hold a front rack position and he can squat to depth. Okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you'd be surprised how many like big guys in football can't squat to depth. Like it's pretty common to see big boys and like linemen that actually can't get all the way down, like Astagrass, have a hard time even breaking parallel.
Yeah, because I feel like there's a lot of football strength coaches out there that just took Louis Simmons' West Side for football, and they're like, "Okay, this is all I need, nothing else."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. or we can get you to squat a few inches higher, but I can put it on the internet that I got you to squat 600 pounds or 650 or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, instead of that long-term approach. But like, in my opinion, it's way more impressive when you have someone putting that much weight on their back, but they're going like ass to grass. It
Right.
just takes a little bit longer, but if you just don't rush that process.
Right.
Like, even when you first came in, Max, like what was your squat like when you first came in?
I think my squat, I think like the first month I squatted 400 for a double. So 180 for a double.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was
Yeah,
like,
that's great.
that was last March, like 2019 March. And now,
Yeah, 15-year-old Max.
Nice.
I was like 560.
Yeah. So, Isaac, can you speak a little more to what resources you were using to kind of learn how to coach and learn a little bit more about weightlifting? Because you mentioned you ran into a few people from Cal Strength, and then you were trying to just absorb as much information as you could.
Right. So leading up into that point, like again, there wasn't much for weightlifting at all. Like I remember doing my first CrossFit cert, and I was trying to have a conversation of like, do the bar and the body interact? Like, does that happen at all? And everything is like, well, it kind of depends. And that's the best answer that I could get.
Yeah.
And, there was videos, like there were videos from Catalyst, there were videos from California Strength. There were those things that you're able to like extrapolate information from, or you're able to watch them. You're able to watch their lifters. But leading up into meeting a few people from Cal Strength, you basically had to figure it out your own way.
Yeah.
It in terms of creativity and experimenting, like I learned a lot that way, but I wasn't given a lot of like concrete information. I was down in a course in Arizona. There's a few people from Cal Strength there, and they weren't big athletes. Like they were CrossFitters that trained at Cal Strength to improve their weightlifting. And so I pretty well just be like, listen, man, I don't care if I have to pay you, but like during lunch, just tell me everything that you know. Like give me as much as you possibly can. Because these guys were taking my back squat 5RM, and they were doing like set for set back and forth of a light day or easy day squatting 5 sets of 5. And I was like, man, I bust my ass for this shit. And these guys are just doing it easily. Like I'm tired of being a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
So from that point, I kind of did as much as I could. Like I brought the late great Don McCauley and up to Nova Scotia, and I learned as much as I could from him. Sean Rigsby was there. Like I was able to learn from those guys quite a bit. And I pretty well, like when I was 25, 28, financed bringing people to Nova Scotia to do mini training camps or training camps so that we can upgrade the overall information.
Yeah.
Some were great, some were not, but they're learning experiences regardless.
Yeah.
I did some mentorships with some of the French Canadian coaches, and we brought their athletes down, and I learned a lot from them. But I think if you don't have access to that sort of information, it's the thing that I learned the most from was actually going down to Worlds in 2015, just because there's something that you see about the lift that watching it, even though that the video quality is great now, there's something about seeing the rhythm in real life that you can't capture on a camera. And that's kind of where I learned up to that point the absolute most, is that I watch sessions from 8 a.m. to 11:30 at night at like 45 degrees at the same chair or same seat day in, day out, so that I can watch this lift in its completion as best as I possibly could. And there's the rhythm of the lift that you can't necessarily see from video, or like maybe you guys weren't around when this particularly happened, but there is a point of where you must hit the bar as hard as you possibly can. And like, you're basically impregnating the barbell.
Yeah.
But
Good old John North.
Yeah, right. But that's like shit, man. That's like the information that I had.
Yeah.
So so it was deconstructing from that point of where like there's certainly going to be an interaction here,
Yeah.
but that interaction is not happening the way that I perceived it leading up into this point of actually seeing it in real life.
Hmm.
So I think I'm tangenting off here if I can reel this back in. But a lot of the coaches that I picked up the most from were definitely the French Canadian coaches, even the French Canadian athletes, because they would do things that were typically not seen around in a lot of programming. Like we had Alex Belmar doing a training camp with us, and he did 3 sets of 6 at 120 kilos for snatches before he went up to a 1RM. And I think he missed 150 that day, or he went after 153. Seeing a lot of the stuff that like Mo Sharon would do, or Crystal Nagarin, like, and their coaches, picking up as much information from them. I learned a lot from Yvonne Darceny just by watching them coach. Like I think they were great resources and assets to be around for sure.
Yeah. I think they have kind of like a little bit of quasi-secret information because they don't do a whole lot of anything on the internet
Right.
Yeah. So I'm sure they do have a whole lot of this knowledge that just doesn't end up getting shared with anyone outside of their circle. So that's a really
Right.
good opportunity.
Mm-hmm. But when you talk to them about it, they're good. Like if you buy any one of them a beer, and if they are able to understand your English, like you're great, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Just an old school approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So then what are your guys' goals kind of moving forward for this next quad here?
Oh, what's at the end of that quad?
Yeah.
So we don't know if it's going to be 2024 or 2025. Like we don't know how the regulations are going to be.
Yeah.
But you know, that's kind of the investment that we kind of made from day one. Like with when I started working with Quinn, we had a coach from Ontario that said, like, he basically said, if Quinn doesn't snatch 190 and clean and jerk 240, you fucked up. And like I was 25 at this point. And I'm just like, holy shit. Like I need to learn now. I need to learn as much as I possibly can now. But that's kind of
like the day before I was missing like 90 kilos on snatches. So
right, or like half a meter forward, like trying to save it. But that's kind of the thing. It's just like he's right now for him as a super, like he's one of the strongest people around. And it's like there's something that we both believe in that he's capable of doing. So that's kind of been our driving force from the point where we started working together for however long, like Quinn's in the game.
Yeah, I feel like that's like almost anyone's goal too, right? Is to like achieve the highest level of competitiveness or highest level of competition in the sport they're in, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could sit here and say, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics, but so does everyone, right? But that's the end goal. And whether it happens or not, like we're still going to compete and still going to go to these competitions and still going to train.
Yeah. Because it's all just like one large process, right? And whether or not for the Olympics or for World Championships, like really all that changes is the time frame rather than what's going on in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What else do we have here? What are some special considerations you take into training for working with a super heavyweight, Isaac?
This is going to be a fun one. So a good coach once told me is 1 large guy equals 10 small guys. And what he meant by that is that because athletes that are larger, there's more of their body that they have to move in space. There's more awareness that they have to develop. The learning curve is a little bit longer. So that's why part of the reason in a closer to drug-free weightlifting, you're starting to see the average age of supers be a little bit higher than athletes in like the welterweight classes or the middleweight classes. And that's the thing. Like there'll be points of when Quinn and I will be having a conversation and like I appreciate this guy to death, but it'll be like he'll go from one lift that will look not great to another lift that will look phenomenal. And I want him to understand, like every athlete, you want to build autonomy with them. I'm like, all right, did you feel the difference there? And you're like, man, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like they're the same lift. And to me, like I'm almost getting like, I understand that it takes him a little bit longer in that case.
Yeah.
So what I've usually done before with most athletes is that I give them variations, and I'd use that as a stimulus, because if I just go to power snatches, cleans, power snatches, if I'm only and like hangs, like if I only use those variations, I don't want to pigeonhole his progress. I don't want to get stuck at something.
Yeah.
But if I'm giving him variation, for him, it was just like, it would be like day one in learning how to snatch again. So learning how to block snatch was just as hard or difficult as learning how to snatch. Learning how to do like a no foot movement power clean to work on something in particular, that would take him just as long. So it got to a point of where I'm like, well, if I can't use variation as a stimulus, then I have to use volume as a stimulus. So we'll do things of where we had to build him up from doing sets of 3s up to sets of 4s, up to sets of 5s, even in the things of where he's doing sets of 6 on hang snatches. And we'll do that for a shorter block to give you that stimulus.
Yeah.
And then we'll progressively, we'll go from 6s to 4s to 2s. Then we'll go from 4s to 3s to 2s. And then we'll go through like 3s to 2s to 1s. And that's the easiest way for me to explain it.
Yeah.
But it was better for us to make more progress because we're able to add tonnage, because he's very objective. So it's not something where he's feeling the movement out. He's like, am I adding more load to this? So it's more about having higher volume for shorter blocks. And then because he's such a fast adapter, rather than doing a particular rep to 5 weeks, we'll adjust the reps much quicker. But each time that we restart, we'll just start a little bit lower. So we're going from 110 on 6s, cycle to 4s and 2s, but we'll start at 120 for 5s, and then cycle back. And then by that time, when he's on triples and doubles, he's like, this isn't killing me anymore. Like, this feels light. This feels easy. Like, I'm not going to die. It feels like my spleen is going to pop out of my eye after a set of 6 on snatches or hang snatches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of attest to that as well, because I've been trying to give Max variation as a stimulus, and then not a big fan of it so far.
No.
Yeah, we'll go to like a deficit snatch with an eccentric lower, and then snatch from as the plates are just above the platform, and it's like, oh, it's day one of learning how to snatch again.
Right. And like when you have, I kind of equate it to like, your weightlifting career is pretty well dog years. Like, you only have 13 years to do something.
Yeah.
So I can spend this time and teaching him this new variation, but if we have a competition in like 3 months, I need something more that I can see something more output driven for him. Like if we had more time and like he's not competing over the next year, then we can probably play like, let's do more block work. We'll do no contact work. Let's do these other variations where we're adding variation and stimulus. But for the time being, it made more sense for us to be like, I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but you're doing sets of 5 hang snatches or hang power snatches.
I'd rather do sets of 6 snatches than no contact snatches. Like if I never have to do a no contact snatch, I will be a very happy athlete.
Yeah.
Like if I never have to do one again, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, he'd rather take 6s versus singles. And he's a super heavyweight, so that's got to tell you something.
Yeah.
There was at one point where like all I was doing was no contact snatches for like a couple weeks, and we ended up maxing it out. And I was just like, man, this sucks. Like I hate this. This is so hard and so different. I just want to like snatch. Like give me 6s, give me 8s. I don't care. I'll just snatch that.
All right, that's a 12 snatch.
Honestly, still rather do that than no contact snatches. So
yeah.
Felt like I was dying every time I dove under the bar.
Mm-hmm.
So how long of a cycle does it usually take you to work from like say 6s down to 2s and then back up to 3s and then back down to 1s? Is that something that's like 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
If you're asking me, I have no idea. That's an Isaac thing.
Yeah.
So usually, just because he adapts quickly to reps, but he also adapts very quickly to intensity. We like each week I get feedback from him, and that's going to adjust the following week or the next week. But if I'm going to average it out, it's going to be 2-week blocks. So it'll be a 2-week block of 6s, a 2-week block of 4s, a 2-week block of 2s, and then we'll go back up to 5s. And then we'll do, if he has 2 bad days in a row, then what we'll do is that we'll do like a reactive deload, and then we'll make those next few days a little bit lighter, and then we restart the week that, you know, he didn't snatch the numbers that we were intending on snatches or intending to snatch. So usually for that, it ends up being about 2-week blocks. When we go into more of an intensity cycle, we're touching like a specific stimulus or like a specific rep for usually about 2 workouts, and then we'll bring the reps down, just because if he pushes a clean and jerk double, he might not come back from that for 10 days.
Yeah.
So like I need to make sure that we're coaxing progression.
Yeah, rather
Because
than
I
just
get him
overloading and putting him in the dirt.
right. Because if I push him, or if we push something for like clean and jerk doubles for too long, or like hang triples for too long, and he hits a specific percentage or a specific number that's higher, then what's going to end up happening is like I miss a week because he needs to back off from training.
Yeah.
And then if I'm looking to peak in 2 weeks from that point, I pretty well peaked him too early.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm adjusting the reps more frequently, we tend to mitigate the damage, unless he kind of like goes off program. He's like, fuck it, I'm gonna do 150 for like a hang double for snatches, and then on the Friday following from Tuesday, he's like, like I'm beat up.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I feel like our training relationship is constantly me wanting to go up and Isaac just like tugging my leash.
Yeah.
Being like, no.
Yeah. That sounds like me and Max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Max, okay, we're going to go to a heavy double today. And he's like, okay, but now I'm going to take it to a single. And then just, no complex, just the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll do that sometimes.
And then another thing too is like, how do you think we can get more athletes to transition from collegiate sports over to weightlifting when they're done? Because weightlifting isn't necessarily an early entry sport, right? It's something that people can do after they're done a whole career in another sport and still find success in.
Quinn, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah. So like, I agree with you and disagree with you. Like, I think like you asked, how do we get people to transition to weightlifting after they're done their sport? So I think you should almost be asking, how do we get people to make weightlifting their sport, right? Like their first sport. So I guess to answer your question, it's probably have like more like strength and conditioning coaches of their sport that they're in. They should have like a better understanding of the movements, snatch, clean, and jerk, and just like let people know that, you know, weightlifting is actually a sport.
Yeah.
Like when I tell people I'm a weightlifter, they're just like, oh, my friend's nephew is a weightlifter. He's the strongest man in Canada or something. And I'm like, cool, probably not, but like good for them. Like, yeah, they go to the gym 3 times a week, right? I get a lot of that. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. You don't know what weightlifting is. Like, it's not your fault, but like weightlifting is just not very well known around here. And I think like I said, if strength and conditioning coaches in other sports have a better understanding of the movements, like everyone knows what a clean is, right? Or for the most part, like it's taught in a lot of sports. It's in a lot of strength and conditioning programs. And people know that powerlifting is bench, dead, squat, but they just think powerlifting is anything like strongman, weightlifting. They all think it's called powerlifting. So I guess some sort of that, but also I think what'll help with that is getting kids in weightlifting earlier. So kids know when they're younger that it's an option. Maybe not make it their primary sport, but know that it is an option when they're done playing, you know, baseball or hockey or whatever after college, or they can do both to a certain point, right?
Yeah.
I think it's more so about getting a younger crowd into weightlifting earlier on, like teaching it as a sport in gym class, teaching it, like having after school programs that are based around weightlifting and things like that, right? I think that's how you get more people in the sport long term, because then the kids bring it home, and then all of a sudden there's like parents that are like ex-collegiate athletes that are like, oh wow, like I can be competitive at something when I'm 40, like there's a master's division, that's awesome, I'm going to do that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's more so starting them young instead of just saying, how do we get the leftovers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can chime in here. I think the thing that I've been somewhat, because we kind of have to MacGyver everything. Like we have to, like, we don't have a lot of financial resources. So the thing that I've done is I partner up with sports that have an opposing season to us. So swimming, track and field, and soccer. Right now I have a junior from each of those sports. And I do mentorships with the track and field coaches of being like, you don't necessarily need, like, if you're going to be doing this on your own with your own athletes, we can do one of two things. I can teach you to teach them how to do a power clean, or when they're not training, or when they're not in season for track and field, I have something for them to do. So they're not just, sitting around on their ass for the next 9 months, because the track and field season, at least around here, is pretty short.
Yeah.
So if, like, I think the point is right now is that because we don't have the same visibility, and we kind of alluded to it, that like we're not doing so great on social media unless it's specific athletes that are putting something out, or you putting something out on social media. I think it's the point of where coaches are like, go to the sports that don't have a lot of money in them. Like around here, wrestling doesn't have a lot of money. You can't get a hockey kid because they're already they already have some sort of contract with a trainer that trained this one guy that's in the NHL.
Yeah.
But athletes that are in swimming, or athletes that are in lacrosse, or even like ringette or badminton, whatever it ends up being, go to the sports that don't necessarily have the same finances as like the big three. Create relationship with their coaches and be like, hey, like I will give them an opportunity to continue on with training. You have better athletes. If they don't get a scholarship out of university, then at least I give them a fallback on.
Yeah.
Rather than someone starting off at 19 and they're like, okay, I need to find a sport. They find you. You have them from the point of where they're 15. And even though they're only weightlifting 2 to 3 times a week for half the year, that's a significantly larger base than just starting at 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many athletes are there that they love sports in high school? They're on their football team, they're on a soccer team, whatever team, but then they realize, okay, I'm not going to get a scholarship to a varsity team. Now they're just
Right.
like, okay, I have nothing left to do. Right. That's a huge population of people that if they were weightlifting throughout high school, even just twice a week, that could just transition right into that.
Right.
Totally.
If you're part of a club, it's club membership and weightlifting shoes.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an incredibly expensive sport for a lot of beginner athletes.
Yeah.
Like you guys will be traveling around quite a bit, and some of it's probably going to come out of your own dollar. Like Quinn and I have had to finance our own things. That's when things get a little expensive.
Yeah. But that's going to be the same for any sport if you're going internationally.
Exactly.
Right.
Go to a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, honestly, like I have old weightlifting shoes that I would love to give someone that started or is starting, right? I know not every kid has size 14 feet, but I know a lot of people that just like have old weightlifting shoes that they just like wore out, or the strap busted, or, they got messed up or whatever. And they're like, optimally, they're not good anymore, right?
Yeah.
They're made cheaper now. So, man, like if a kid came in and was weightlifting and was size 14 feet and was like, I like weightlifting, I'd literally bring in all my spares and be like, pick one. What do you want? Like, do you want a white pair, a black pair? Do you want to mix and match? Like, take whatever you want, man. So like, I think people, like the people involved in weightlifting, love weightlifting so much because they like, it gave them something to remain competitive in after their primary sport kind of ended. Or you gain a lot of relationships in it and friendships that are like internationally, right?
Yeah.
Just from competing and meeting people. So like they want to share this with people, and they're willing to do it so much to like if someone walks in the door, it's like, yeah, here, have these shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know one thing I try to do now is like, okay, I look on Kijiji every once in a while. I'm like, okay, it's a pair of shoes, $30, pick them up. Kid walks in, needs shoes. Here's shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, other sports, like when I started playing football, all you needed was cleats, and they supplied everything else. Cleats and mouth guard. That's all you needed. They supplied helmet, shoulder pads, game pants, game jerseys, practice jerseys, everything. And then same in high school. And then like they even do the laundry in, you know, college. They do your laundry for you. Like it's crazy. And then in weightlifting, it's like, please, like, take these shoes and come train with us, right? Like it's a totally different world as far, and a lot of that is like funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And membership base. I mean, our biggest competition is provincials, and that's in November, and we have a cap on how many people can enter, and it's like 60 or 70 or 80 people, I think. And that's like the biggest competition in the Maritimes, probably is like 60 people. And it's huge for the Maritimes, but if you go to like Montreal or Ontario or something, like that's just like a club comp.
Yeah.
Or close to it anyways. It's like they have such bigger membership. And again, back to what I was saying about like teaching it in gym class. I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the Quebec schools actually teach it in gym class.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do.
And they have like high school clubs, and they have high school teams, and they have competitions the same way that, you know, like the high school soccer team plays this other high school soccer team. I think it's similar in the weightlifting world. I might be wrong on that, but from what I heard, that's the model.
Yeah, it's slowly moving that way in Alberta. Because in the Calgary public education system, every sports performance class has to do a weightlifting unit.
Oh, so, nice.
Hey, that's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And up in Edmonton, they have two schools that have full weightlifting platforms, plates. One school has 18 sets of Alico plates and bars.
Yeah.
Really?
Yo.
Yeah, they have the nicest gym in Alberta.
Basically, like
decked out with
the nicest gym in like Western Canada for like weightlifting.
And it's in high school.
That's more Alico sets that exist in the Maritimes, man.
Yeah, that's where they had junior nationals.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So that was a nice spot.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It's a super nice spot. It's like it's a perfect warm-up room because it's just a gym with 18 platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had some universities that were starting to get clubs, but the problem with that is that, or not really problem, but the issue of why they can't keep like going more than a few years is like they're student run. So it's a student at Dal that's like, I love weightlifting. And there's another student at Dal that's like, I love weightlifting too. And they're like, let's start a club. And they start a club, right? And they're usually like second or third year before they realize you can actually start a club and how to do it. And they do it. They get a few people and then they graduate.
Yeah.
And then the club just like not falls apart, but dwindles. And then it just kind of like rinses and repeats. So there's never really like a, I don't know, club captain, if that's what you call it, who is there like long-term, like a coach or something. I think that might be changing now, but I remember a few years ago, Dal had like a club that was starting up and then it just like didn't, and it's starting up again now. And I know Acadia had a really strong club for a few years and then a lot of the guys graduated. And now I don't know if Acadia has a club. I might be wrong on that, but like these universities get clubs and they're student run and then the students graduate and then it just kind of like falls off a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's been hard to like maintain clubs.
Yeah. Because one of the things I'm kind of struggling with is like I'm going back to school at University of Alberta for my master's.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm there, my supervisor wants me to run a weightlifting club. But then I'm thinking, okay, I run this weightlifting club while I'm here for 2 years and then I graduate. And then what?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You put all this work into something that only exists for 2 years and then you either got to keep doing it or just recruit someone to take this load of work. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is going to add more hours to your day to train them to train others.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's tough.
You should do it though.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100% go for it.
There's no way I'm just not going to do it, but I'm how do I make this run if I'm not there anymore?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Max, in your like high school environment, is there anyone that even knows what weightlifting is, or are you just like the
No,
outlier?
no. They just like they see me like, you know, snatch, and they're like, oh, that's the clean and jerk, right? Like they just probably like, you know, see it on Instagram, like, you know, like the high school kid that just clean, you know, 405. Like they think that's like, you know, a clean and jerk, or like, you know, that's what they think weightlifting is. But I'm like, yeah, it's actually, you know, there's some like a snatch, clean and jerk, like they don't know. And like with it, like, and you know, Quinn knows this, like with like football guys, like we know kind of what weightlifting is. Like, you know how to clean. No one really jerks. No one really snatches. But like if you tie, like if football kids at my age and like just general like athletes, speed athletes, power athletes, like throwers and track and field, or you know, offensive linemen and defensive linemen in football, like if they start like understanding weightlifting now, or even doing it, like the kids that don't, you know, play varsity sports will be able to, you know, say, oh, now I can weightlift now, and you know, go to junior nationals, because qualifying for junior nationals for me was 139 kilo total.
Wow,
right?
really?
Yeah. Like
That's sick.
the standards are, yeah, there's basically no standards.
Yeah.
Right? So like, and you can tell that to kids. You're like, you can go to a national meet after only 1 year of doing the sport.
Yeah.
Right? And that's cool, because I've gone to nationals for lacrosse, football, like, and it's cool. Like, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the problems with that is, sure, there's no standards to get to junior nationals, but then you go to junior nationals, and then in your example, it's like, okay, you have a total that's good enough to get you to like a youth Pan Ams or youth Worlds. You got to pull teeth from Canada weightlifting and be like, hey, how do we get this kid going somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, USAW does a really good job at like developing younger athletes too, and I think like they have the youth Pan Ams, youth World teams, and I think I mean, the new leadership in the CWF should help that long term as well. So that I think I know they're like the new AO series that was supposed to come to Canada before the whole COVID thing happened. Like I know we're partnering a lot with USAW, and I think that's going to be good for the development of like younger kids in the long run. Learning from the USAW models, learning how they, you know, just what they do and how they do it, and seeing how we can mimic that. Again, I can't speak for the CWF, but that's kind of what it seems like is happening, and it's awesome. It's only going to be good things.
Yeah, I really hope that they can bring in the USAW model of like coach education as well, because I think that's something that would be super beneficial for coaches here. Because like you were saying before, Isaac, there was nothing, and you kind of just had to figure out your own way.
Right.
If Canada Weightlifting could bring in the USAW model of teaching, there's so much more content in there than there is in the NCCP.
Right. And I think the big issue with that, it's up to the province. So it's not like the information that you get from Quebec versus Nova Scotia versus Saskatchewan, like they're supposed to follow a very loose curriculum.
Yeah.
But it can be based on the coach's biases. Or is it really about coaching people or getting people to know how to coach? Or is this I'm just going to farm as many people through this over X amount of weekends because they're all paying me $350 plus a month, or $350 plus for the course.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be more of a government or more of an umbrella system, rather than it just being up to the provinces.
Yeah.
Because again, like you're going to look at the pedigree of experience from you guys out west to Ontario to Quebec, but then you have like in Newfoundland, their provincials was in a guy's basement.
Okay.
I was in that basement because I actually had to qualify there twice because we didn't have anything here. But like that's what they have. Like what is someone from PEI who was, you know, maybe he did CrossFit weightlifting and that's his bias, and now he has this loose criteria of what weightlifting is supposed to be, or coaching weightlifting for the NCCP, he's just going to go with what he knows.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing about it. Like there needs to be something that is, and I'm pretty sure they are working with it. Like I know Yvonne Darceny got asked to help out with the coaching education. I'm pretty sure Greg Chin is helping out with the level 1, level 2. And that guy is like business-wise for weightlifting, coaching-wise for weightlifting. Like he is a phenomenal asset for Canadian weightlifting.
Definitely.
Shout out to Greg Chin there.
Shout out. RIP just left.
Yeah.
Long live just left.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think that's all that I had for notes here. Is there anything else you guys wanted to cover?
Oh man, it's your podcast.
Yeah, man.
You got any other questions? We can
fire on questions. You can go.
We can shoot the shit all day.
Yeah.
Oh, Max, did you have anything else you wanted to chat about?
Nah, I'm all good. Yeah.
All right.
The strong silent type over there with Max, huh?
Yeah.
Smile and nod, bud.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks for coming on. It was awesome to have some insight from you guys down east as what weightlifting's like down there and what it's like across Canada.
No, man, thanks for having us. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to chat again sometime. See how
Yeah,
things
you bet.
are after quarantine's done.
Totally.
Mm.